Hi everyone, this video is to show you how to edit photos for black and white editing. It's going to be quite similar to color editing, except for the fact that we're not going to use hue saturation or color balance in our edits. And we're going to use the additional black and white layer adjustment. So I'm just going to start at the very beginning. I have a folder full of images right here, and a couple of them are not necessarily of people, but I am going to use them as examples because I don't have any good examples on my computer. So anyway, just to sort of the very beginning, let's say I want to use this photo through this photo as my FED examples. I'm going to select them by clicking on the first one, pressing Shift on my keyboard and clicking on the final one. I'm going to right click them, get info. I'm going to make sure that it has my name and the assignment name on it, so Coleman FED. X out, go up to File, go to Export, export those photos into a folder, which most of you should have already done yesterday, but I'm going to make sure that I'm creating a folder on my desktop that's called last name, FED, create, export those to that folder, and my folder should show up on my desktop with those 5 images in it. Once this is done, I can just X out of the Photos app, and I can open my photos by, oopsie, cool, thank you, go away. I can open my photos by double clicking on the folder and seeing my JPEG versions of all of my images here. You should now be taking that folder though, if you haven't done so yet, and dragging it into Google Drive and giving me a shareable link and a hi, you can see my child here, giving me a shareable link through Google Drive into the assignment. So your assignment is the shooting assignments, unedited FED, foreshortening, elongation, distortion. So please make sure you're getting that turned into this assignment. Okay, so next up, you guys are going to select your best 6 edits from here. So let's say I want to edit all 5 of these photos because that's all I have in my folder. I'm going to select all of them by clicking on my mouse and dragging up. I'm going to take all of those files and drag them down into Photoshop to open them up. And I'm going to allow them to open up. Remember, you're going to need several things in your Photoshop workspace. You're going to need your layers palette, you're going to need the properties palette, you're going to need your history palette, which you guys can go up to window to get any of these things, oopsie, on your workspace of Photoshop, and you're going to need your tools, okay? So window tools, window layers, window history, properties, okay? I don't need my histogram, let's get rid of that. So start off with adding your adjustment layers. You're going to click on this little icon down here that is to create a new fill or adjustment layer. And the first thing I'd like you to do is to change this photo into black and white by adding a black and white adjustment layer. It's really important that you do that first because once you take the color away, it's going to affect how your brightness and contrast and your curves will end up. So down towards the middle, there's a black and white adjustment layer if you haven't used this yet, and it's basically taking away the color information. If I want to see the color, I can just turn that layer off. Otherwise, black and white on top. One thing you can do within the black and white layer is adjust the temperature of all of these colors. Even though there aren't any colors in this image, there's still colors basically like underneath that you can adjust. So if you know this photo originally has a lot of blue, which it does, you can actually adjust to make the blue a little bit darker. So I'm going to make my blue and my sky a little bit darker. If I go this way, it kind of blends out the clouds, but if I go in the opposite direction, I can really increase the contrast in the clouds. And you can just play around with the different layers here. Like obviously I don't want to go so dark that I'm creating this kind of like apocalyptic sky, but I can make the cyans a little bit darker. There really isn't any green in the photo. There probably isn't much yellow, a little bit of red in the sign, and there probably isn't much purple. After I'm done with my black and white layer, I'm going to create a brightness contrast layer, and most importantly, I'm going to create a curves layer. So we're going to continue to use curves and continue to use brightness contrast. So in brightness contrast, I'm just going to increase the brightness a little bit, and I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. Subtle difference, but it's good overall. In curves, I'm going to do the same thing. So pay attention to the level of black areas in the photo versus the level of white areas in the photo, and then all the grays in between. If you're unsure how to use curves, just bring up the white a little bit, bring down the black a little bit, bring up the gray a little bit, and usually you have a pretty successful photo. I'm going to bring up the white a little bit more, increase the gray a little bit more, increase the black a little bit more to get as much contrast as I can get. Okay, don't want to lose the clouds, but I want there to be pure white and I want there to be pure black in my photo and all of the grays in between. Okay, so once you are done with those 3 layers, please don't continue to add more and more layers. There really isn't much more you can do to this photo that involves black and white adjustments. We can get into levels, we can get into exposure, but really keeping it kind of simple with the amount of layers that you're using is key here. So you do not need to add more layers than these 3 layers. We're not doing selective adjustments unless there's areas of your photo that you would like to brighten versus darken. So for example, the back of these signs, I could take away my brightness contrast adjustment from the back side by grabbing my paintbrush, increasing the size of it, and while I'm on my brightness contrast layer, I could take away that adjustment from like just the sign if I wanted to, so that sign is a little bit darker on the back side. So you can do things like that, but we're not going to be dealing with color versus black and white or anything too funky with this project. I'd like them to be more fine arty and simple and black and white with really good contrast editing. So you can see that I've adjusted these little parts of the sign, and that's basically the difference right there. So when you're done, go to File, go to Save As. Your name should be on it. You should have a number next to it. Make sure you're saving it as a PSD first. You can create a new folder for it. So I'm just going to put this on my desktop for now. Make sure it's saving as a Photoshop file. Hit Save. Hit OK. I'm going to go up to File, Save As. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And I'm going to actually add the word Edit to the end because I already have a JPEG with the name Coleman FED1. Desktop, JPEG, hit Save. Hit OK. So that's 1 down. I've got 1 PSD and I've got 1 JPEG and I have 5 more to go. Okay, so this is how you're editing for black and white. There are a lot of other ways to edit for black and white, but adding a black and white adjustment layer is the best way, I think, to do this in Photoshop. Thank you, good luck, and have fun.